Hey there, if you made it here, thank you. I got a story to share. In the last story, we saw how Father Matteo Salvi barely escaped from death, being attacked by a vampire, saved by a gunshot from his brother John. This story is about to get more into the details. So sit back, here we begin. John. The name barely escaped my lips, hoarse from exhaustion and the rawness in my throat. It was my younger brother. Brother John, a priest, tall, built like a warrior, with a stern, weathered face, body tattooed after each successful hunt. His eyes, though kind, always seemed to carry some gravity. His hair, long and elegant. Even in the chaos, John had always remained my rock. He holds an armory of weapons, metallic cross, English longswords, tiger claws, stuff that can seriously injure anything. Once in a while he will hit the beer bar and the ladies will go crazy. Well, we shall not go on those details. He stepped closer. He looked at me with concern, his gaze scanning my wounds as he knelt beside me. "Brother," he began, his voice low but steady, "I knew you were in danger. I couldn't just wait. Not after everything we've seen." His hands reached down, carefully lifting me up as I groaned in pain. "I had to find you. I was worried. Lately, you've been working all alone. I couldn't let that happen." I swallowed, a mix of relief and frustration sweeping over me. "You should have stayed back, John. It's too dangerous. This thing is more than we've ever faced." He didn't respond immediately, just gave me a nod, his gaze narrowing as he looked around, sensing the stillness in the air. The creature was still nearby, its presence lingering even in the fog, in the smoke, in the air. His face hardened with resolve. "I know. That's why I came. I've been tracking it too. I know where it's been. And I know what it's capable of. I was about to confront the mayor myself, until I found out the truth." He paused, looking at me meaningfully, his lips tight. "It's not the mayor anymore. It's something else. I've been investigating just like you. This creature, it's not a vampire in the traditional sense, not exactly. It has evolved. The mayor has been consumed by it. There's no saving him now." "Then why did you come? We can't just sit around waiting for it to kill someone again." His eyes hardened. "I've brought something. Something we need to finish this tonight." He led me over to his car, parked just off the road behind a cluster of trees. It wasn't much, just a regular vehicle, but as I got closer, my eyes fell on the trunk. It was open and inside were weapons. I knew this was no standard armory. Lots of bullets, all glowing under the moonlight. Silver-coated bullets. John pulled out a sleek, custom-made sniper rifle, long, precise, and built for stealth. He handed me a shotgun. Alongside there were grenades. These were silver grenade variants, each packed with jagged silver shrapnels. But that wasn't all. John reached deeper into the trunk and pulled out something deadly. There were multiple C4 charges. These had been carefully modified. Tucked away in small metal boxes were the explosive charges rigged with remote detonation wires. He handed me a silver-plated hunting knife, its blade gleaming with a faint, ghostly hue. "Keep this with you," he said, his voice calm yet grave. We slid the grenades into our backpacks, each piece of equipment secured and ready to go. The rifle was strapped across my back, shotgun in my hand, and I checked my own pistol, making sure it was fully loaded with silver bullets. Every action was deliberate. "All right," I said, my voice sharp despite the pain. "Let's finish this." Together, we walked toward the edge of the road, scanning the area. Our eyes were sharp, alert to every sound. The night was eerily quiet, too quiet. As we walked, the forest around us grew thicker, the trees stretching toward the sky like dark sentinels. The road turned to dirt, and the shadows seemed to deepen. After walking nearly for half an hour down the woods, we saw an old farmhouse. The place was silent. It was then that I heard it, the faintest sound. A rustle, soft flap of wings. I froze. John stopped beside me, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the area. "We're close," he whispered. "Stay sharp." We moved silently, our steps barely making a sound as we approached the farmhouse. The place was overgrown with vines, the windows shattered and dark. It looked abandoned. Its once glorious structure now sagged in disrepair, the windows broken, vines climbing up its walls like grasping hands. The stench of rot hung heavy in the air, and the building seemed to exude a strange malevolence. John and I exchanged a look, and without a word, we split up, moving carefully around the perimeter. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing in. Suddenly I heard it, the soft flutter of wings again. "Stay sharp," John whispered, his voice barely audible. He had stopped in his tracks, his eyes narrowing as he aimed the sniper rifle at a distant shape on the horizon. "It's coming." I swallowed hard, my hand instinctively tightening on the grip of shotgun. We saw a shadow gliding near the vines, taking slow steps. John and I gave each other a quick glance before he gestured toward the back of the house. We needed to corner it. I moved in that direction, holding my breath. Then, as if summoned by our thoughts, the creature appeared. Its silhouette was monstrous, a massive form flapping its wings against the night air. It wasn't just a bat anymore. It was a predator, towering over 7 feet tall. John didn't hesitate. He aimed the rifle and fired. The shot was silent, but the impact shook it. The creature staggered, its wings thrashing violently. The bullet had struck its shoulder. But it wasn't finished. The creature rose again, shrieking in fury. Before we could even move, it launched itself into the air with terrifying speed, aiming directly for John. "Get down!" I shouted. I threw myself at the creature, firing my shotgun at its face. 3 shots to the head at point-blank range. It stumbled backward, letting out a shrill cry of pain. Half of its face shattered, brains and blood guttering and splashing. I got blood all over my body. The creature, now gravely wounded, gave me one last look, full of rage, full of hatred, before it spread its wings. John and I collapsed onto the grass, breathing heavily. Then came a fury of shots. My ear deafened as John shot it multiple times. "You screwed him, brother," I muttered to him, still trying to catch my breath. The creature now lay dismembered, smoked and dead. John smiled weakly, his hand clutching his side. "We did it. But something didn't feel right. I had this strange feeling that it's not the one that consumed the mayor. Or was I wrong? I kept these thoughts to myself, didn't utter a word. Then as we crouched behind the thick stone wall, the tranquility of the night was suddenly broken by a blood-curdling scream. It was distant, but unmistakable, a woman's scream, filled with terror and pain. Without a word, we both sprang to our feet and started running toward the sound. The scream echoed through the quiet streets. We pushed forward, moving with urgency, our footsteps muffled by the damp ground. The house was only a few blocks away. As we approached, the terror in the air was palpable. The door to the house was ajar, its hinges creaking in the wind. We moved inside, our weapons drawn. The interior was eerily quiet, save for the sound of our boots on the floor. The stench of death was thick, heavy in the air. Then we saw it. The bodies. 3 of them. The 2 women and a man lay in the living room, their lifeless eyes staring at nothing. It was obvious they had been brutally attacked. Their faces were twisted in expressions of sheer terror, their throats ripped open. Blood pooled around their bodies, staining the floor, a stark contrast against the wooden panels of the old house. "John," I whispered, trying to steady my breath, "there are more. We have to finish this." John nodded grimly, his eyes hard as stone. He was right beside me as we turned to leave the house. There was no time for grief. We needed to go back to the mayor's house and prepare for the final confrontation. The creature wouldn't wait. We couldn't afford to waste any more time. We retraced our steps, moving quickly back to the mayor's estate. The charges had to be set and detonated before the creature could make another kill. We moved carefully around the perimeter of the mayor's house, checking every corner, ensuring the explosives were positioned just right. John double-checked the C4 detonators, making sure the wires were ready to be triggered from a safe distance. Once everything was set, we found a position behind the house to wait. We covered each other's backs, staying in the shadows, silent and patient. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the final confrontation. Then, without warning, the air shifted. We both felt it. The weight of the air, thick with tension. A faint sound reached our ears, the unmistakable flapping of wings. I immediately knew this was the one that attacked me in the first place. A low, rumbling sound, like something large was coming our way. There was the creature. It appeared suddenly, soaring across the sky. Then, with a loud thud, it landed on the roof of the mayor's house, its wings folding neatly behind it. We didn't move. We held our breath, watching it from behind the wall. The creature paused, its eyes darting in every direction. It was looking for us, sensing something was off, but it didn't yet know that we had set the trap. John adjusted his stance, his finger resting lightly on the trigger of his rifle. I gripped my weapon tightly, my muscles tense and ready for action. We both knew that this was the moment we had been waiting for. It was time to end this. The creature didn't move at first. It seemed to be waiting, its eyes narrowed as if it was trying to sense if it was being hunted. Then, slowly, it turned its head toward the sky. It was waiting. John's rifle was aimed at the creature, his breath steady, his mind focused. We couldn't afford to make a mistake. I pulled my sniper rifle up, aiming at it. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. I aimed for its chest and fired. Damn it! I cursed, firing again. This time I hit its wing. The bullet sank into the membrane, but the creature barely faltered. It screeched in pain, but that only seemed to enrage it more. It darted to the side, shifting in midair like some impossible predator. John was right beside me, his rifle tracking the creature's every movement. He fired, a series of rapid shots. But again the creature weaved and dodged as if it could predict our every move. "This thing isn't like the others," I shouted, frustration mounting in my chest. Every shot we fired seemed to have no effect on it. The creature was moving so fast, it was almost a blur. I shot again, trying to adjust for its movements. But before I could steady my aim, the creature dove. It moved so quickly, it was upon us before we could even react. Its claws slashed through the air with a shriek, and I dove to the side just in time, narrowly missing its strike. The creature's massive form slammed into the ground where I had just been standing, sending a shockwave through the earth. I scrambled to my feet, trying to regain my bearings. John had already moved, trying to flank the creature from the side. I could see the determination in his eyes. He wasn't going to let this thing win. Another screech rang out, and this time, the creature was coming at me again. I raised my rifle, but it was too late. With one mighty flap of its wings, the creature sent me crashing backward as I slammed into the ground. But then, John was covering me, taking shot after shot, forcing the creature to move back. It screeched in irritation but didn't back down. I fought to my feet, blood dripping from a cut on my forehead where I'd hit the ground. My vision swam for a moment. I spotted my rifle a few feet away and crawled toward it, my hands trembling as I grabbed it and steadied myself. The creature was circling back toward us, and its eyes were locked onto me, like I was his primary target. "John!" I shouted, and he immediately adjusted his position, providing cover fire once again. The creature shrieked in pain as a bullet found its target, but it didn't stop. It was still coming. With renewed determination, I aimed again. This time, I wasn't going to miss. I steadied my breath, focused on the beast's center mass, and fired. The bullet tore through its chest, and the creature let out an ear-splitting cry. This time, it stumbled, its massive wings flapping erratically. It screeched one final time, louder than ever, before crashing to the ground with an earth-shattering impact. We both approached slowly, weapons ready, but the creature wasn't moving anymore. It was over. "Is it dead?" I asked, my voice shaky with exhaustion. I couldn't believe it. After all that, we'd finally taken down this nightmare of a creature. John didn't respond right away. His eyes remained on the fallen beast, scanning for any signs of movement. But there was nothing. It was over. John lowered his rifle, exhaling slowly. "Yeah, it's dead," he said, his voice low. "But I don't think this is the end." The creature's massive form lay still on the ground. Its chest still rose and fell, but slowly, almost as if it were struggling to keep hold of life. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder, and smoke hung heavy in the clearing. We both knew this wasn't over yet. There was still danger in that monstrous body. Even in death, the thing could still spring to life, and we couldn't afford to hesitate. John's gaze shifted to the creature, then to his gear, and in a flash, his hand went to the side of his vest. He grabbed a grenade from the pouch with practiced precision. I could hear the faint sound of the pin being pulled, followed by the swift, calculated movements of his arm. His eyes locked onto the beast's head, calculating the distance. We had been through this countless times before. There was no room for error. I felt my pulse quicken. With a grunt, John flung the grenade with perfect accuracy. The creature's broken, bloody eyes twitched, and I thought it might still make a move, anything. But then, the ground beneath us seemed to tremble with the first hint of the explosion. The blast hit with such ferocity that I was knocked off my feet. The deafening roar of the explosion felt like a fist to the chest, followed by a violent shockwave that sent me sprawling backward. My ears rang, and the force of the blast rattled the very bones in my body. The air was filled with debris, chunks of dirt, rock, and the creature's torn flesh, scattering outward in all directions. I heard the sickening crack of the creature's body being obliterated by the blast. Its torso was ripped open, its limbs thrown in all directions, and its skull shattered into a grotesque spray of bone and tissue. The explosion continued to echo in my skull long after the initial roar had faded. When the smoke cleared, I slowly pushed myself up from the ground, the world still vibrating with the remnants of the detonation. The creature's body was almost unrecognizable. What was left of it was nothing more than mangled flesh and shattered bone, its limbs twisted unnaturally in a broken heap. We didn't speak another word as we turned away, making our way back. The sun was beginning to rise. The sounds of battle had faded into the distance, and for a moment, everything felt still, as if the earth itself had exhaled a long-held breath. John turned to me, his face lined with exhaustion, but there was a glint in his eyes that spoke of something more, something that could only come from having fought side by side through countless battles. "You did good, brother," John said, his voice quiet, but the weight of his words was heavy. "We've got through this together." John stepped forward, and before I could even react, he wrapped his arms around me in a tight, solid hug. It was brief, but the weight of it hit me harder than anything. No words were necessary. We both knew that despite everything, despite the constant threat that hung over us like a shadow, we had each other. "We'll be back," he said, pulling away, his voice gruff but comforting. "There's always more. But for now, take care of yourself." I nodded again. As he turned and began to walk away to his car, I watched him go. I stood there for a moment longer, letting the reality of the situation settle in. My brother was right. This wasn't over. The creatures we faced weren't the last. I made my way back, the weight of the remains of the beasts in the back of my mind. I couldn't leave them there to rot. As soon as I reached the edge of the woods, I set a fire, watching as the charred remains of the creatures burned away to nothing. The fire burned on, and the forest around me remained still. It felt like a temporary peace because I knew better. As the last of the remains turned to ash, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my chest. I could feel it deep in my bones, the cold certainty that more was coming. More creatures, more darkness, more death. I made my way to my hotel, every step heavy with the weight of what had happened and what was still to come. As I locked the door to my room and sank into the bed, the events of the night swirled around in my mind. My brother, the battle, the creature, but more than that, I couldn't ignore the lingering thoughts of what could come next. Thank you for your time. If you like the story, do hit a like and press the subscribe button. More stories to come from the Diary of a Priest.